Hey friend, in this tutorial, we are actually going to be doing a technique lesson that is similar to the lessons inside section 1 of my book, Everyday Watercolor. If you don't know about my book, Everyday Watercolor, it is a 30 paintings in 30 days book, and the first section focuses on technique. And that is the lesson we're gonna be focusing on today, which is similar to the bubble paintings in that book. I also have a companion course called Everyday Watercolor Companion Course coming out soon, and you can pre-order that as well if you wanna check it out in the link below. But in this lesson, we're gonna be painting something holiday themed. It's the month of December if you're watching this in real time at the time we post it. And so I wanna get in the mood for the holidays and paint some holly with green leaves. And it's basically a rip right out of the first section in my book, Everyday Watercolor, with my bubble paintings, but we're just gonna be making it into holly. So if you wanna learn a brush technique, how to swirl your brush, hold it vertically versus slanted holds, and going through the tea to butter exercise, but using it with circles and leaves and compound strokes for leaves, then let's dive in. So as I mentioned, this painting is a part of a 5-part series that we're going to be doing on my YouTube channel starting today. And we're going to be painting holly because we're in the holiday season. It's December or end of November of 2023 when I'm painting this. And so we're painting some holiday themed pieces for this 5-week series where I'm highlighting a section from my book, Everyday Watercolor. So starting with the first section, which is on technique. So in this piece, we're gonna be practicing wet and wet technique and also certain brush techniques like a vertical hold where we're swirling our brush around to create this smooth circle. And then also with wet and wet technique, basically taking a page out of my book, Everyday Watercolor, where I cover my bubble pieces or circles. This is one of my favorite exercises to do for people who are beginners or people who are wanting to get better at wet and wet technique. So just doing consecutive circles right next to each other. I'm doing red circles because I'm painting holly today instead of bubbles. And I'm using slightly different variations of red, sometimes a little bit of pink in the mixture, sometimes just red, sometimes a little bit of orange. And then also making sure to switch up my values. So having some lighter, more transparent values of circles and also darker, more creamy consistencies that are more opaque. And after painting a few clusters, kind of like in a bundle, like grapes or obviously holly bundles, and we're just going to sprinkle these little sprigs around the entire sheet of paper. And the next technique that I'm covering in this video is compound strokes. So if you have my book, Everyday Watercolor, or you have heard me talk about compound strokes or wet and wet technique or bubble paintings, any of the stuff in this video, then you are very familiar with my teaching style, obviously. We created a companion style course that goes along with Everyday Watercolor, my books, that is launching next month, January 2024, and we are going to include kind of like a corresponding step-by-step video tutorial that helps with all 3 of my books. And so I'm using a lot of those techniques that are covered in my books today, Everyday Watercolor specifically, and compound strokes are when you use a slightly slanted hold, so the brush is kind of at a 45-degree angle hold, and you press and drag and gradually release the pressure. So when I do some more leaves, I'll show you how to do that. Now moving on to a second little cluster of holly. And I'm working consecutively across the paper as well, because that helps me with my composition to feel a little bit more scattered and random, and also so I can use wet and wet technique between each cluster of holly. So for these little balls or holly balls, I'm just using a vertical hold on my size 16 round brush and pressing and swirling it around to give it this smooth outer edge look. If you use a slanted hold for the outline of holly, it's just gonna look really wonky. So make sure you do a vertical hold where your brush handle is pointed straight up and down, and you press and swirl the brush so that the hair of the brush is what creates the circle, not your fingers. Painting in some more stems. Again, I've only been using my size 16 round brush this whole time. We have links to all the supplies that I'm using in this video in the description if you want to check it out. I also have a complete beginner's guide to watercolor ebook that's totally free, 40 pages, and gives you a deep dive on my favorite supplies, color theory stuff, lots of technique stuff, so lots of ways that you can branch out with your watercolor. Painting in some more leaves, making sure to also vary the hues and the values between my leaves along with the holly. For the vertical hold, swirling around the holly, make sure you're really steady and stable with your arm as you swirl it around. Those are some common mistakes that I see people make after working through my book or YouTube tutorials. So really notice how I hold the brush, how high up I hold the brush, and what slant it's at. So how close the brush handle is to the paper. So for the leaves, you want to make sure that your leaf shapes start at the very edge of a stem and are in line with that stem. So my brush handle is in line with the stem that I'm painting a leaf on. Just adding in a few more stems. I also highly recommend painting a stem first and then a leaf instead of just putting a leaf right up on against something else. It looks a little claustrophobic and always feels a little bit more woven in when you add a stem. So I'm painting in more of these bubbles. Again, a great in-depth exercise is in my book, Everyday Watercolor. And if you want the video companion version of Everyday Watercolor, you can also pre-order or buy my Everyday Watercolor Companion Course. It's available on my website. We'll link to it in the description of this video. So wet and wet technique is the only technique we've been using. We haven't been painting wet on dry, so everything is staying pretty wet this whole time. Obviously, certain parts of the paper are starting to dry, but you do want to work kind of quickly with this type of exercise so you can touch or kiss neighboring elements so that there's a bloom that happens. So you'll notice in the lighter circle shapes, the lighter, more transparent circle shapes, you'll have spots or bursts of color from the neighboring bits that are touching it. That is called a bloom. And that is the magic of wet and wet technique and the magic of watercolor, in my opinion. It's my favorite part of watercolor, so really become comfortable with touching things and just letting the watercolor do its own magical thing, because it has a mind of its own and it will do something awesome if you let it and you don't step in too much. Just finishing up the last little bits of negative space, making sure that everything feels really organic, no sort of repetition going on with where I place my elements or how they're clustering together or the negative space around it. Making sure to mix up my values and my hues of all my little holly bits and leaves. This is what helps to create movement. Last few stems here and there. And voila. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope it was super helpful for you. Again, make sure you check out my book, Everyday Watercolor, if you want more of this type of stuff. Lots of basic drill stuff that's gonna help you improve every single day, and each section builds on the previous, so it gets more complex and more complicated, more detailed throughout the book. And also my companion course is going to be available in January 2024, so you can pre-order it now if you'd like to jump on that. We have a pre-order discount as well that you can check out by clicking the link below. That's only going to be available for pre-order. So once it's released, the price will go up. But still, it's going to be a steal. And one of the best companions or ways to also learn is through video and also book together. So I hope you check those two out. But as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.